I'm Chris Mahon. I've just recently written this novel,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm looking for a publisher, for an agent now. But I told him it's really a kind of book that aims to bridge the secular and the sacred. So, I just thought, um, yeah, that's one of the things I could talk about, as well as kind of my literary origin story and other publications,
Mm-hmm.
and just how I've kind of evolved into a Catholic writer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I am certainly interested in hearing that story. I'm also a Catholic author.
Yeah,
I'm a memoirist. I wrote,
yeah.
yeah. Oh, he told you about my memoir.
Well, no, but I just happened to, and just reading your biography on, for WCAT, and learning about what you've taught. I did learn a little bit about the memoir you wrote. And
Yeah.
so, which seemed very, very,
Intense.
well, yeah, very intense. I was going to say heartfelt, but I hadn't read enough of it
Yeah. Yeah.
but it must certainly be heartfelt, and just I certainly hadn't encountered that story before, so that's
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, really, the only reason I'm here is my mother was going to kill me, but
Wow.
she didn't because she was afraid she'd die
Wow. Yeah.
from the chemical she was taking to abort me. So once she started to bleed, she stopped taking it because she was afraid it would kill her too. Needless to say, that was pretty much the end of that relationship. We
Wow.
did, I took care of them when they were sick, up until the time that they died. I tried to do the right thing. I was always respectful, but I never really had any feelings for them after that.
Wow. And you
Yeah.
learned about that when you were still very young, right? I think.
11. 11.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
that's that's a lot to incorporate, I would
Mm-hmm.
think, for an 11-year-old girl who's just on
Yeah.
her way to becoming a woman, right?
Yeah. 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 So it had quite an impact on me. But I wanted to write it. Not, I don't think that story is all that unusual, because certainly abortion was available in those days, chemical abortion and medical abortion. But there's probably a lot of people going around that have some kind of handicap and have no idea why. And
Hmm.
so I thought that it would be a good thing to let people know that you can go through something like that, and with God's help, you can be better than just a survivor.
Wow.
So you can forgive the people that are involved, but there's a difference between forgiveness and wanting to be with somebody. You know, it's like,
Sure.
yeah, I understand you did something wrong. She was never sorry for it. I understand you did something wrong. People make mistakes. Okay, that's fine. You forgive them. You try to be decent. But I never had love again for them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, already I have some questions which I think would be best answered by reading the book.
Oh, yeah. It's a doozy. I have
But
had so many people come up to me and say, that book it's really good, but it's awful. You know? So the writing must be good. It was written up in Life Review,
wow.
Human Life Review,
Wow.
but it was a brutal story, and it had long-term impact on me physically, you know, and certainly emotionally.
Yeah.
So,
I
mhm.
was going to say that's a lifelong impact to learn,
Mhm. Yeah.
to hear that news at 11 years old, and then that would just create a lifelong impact, I would think.
It did. Um, However, it also made me very radically pro-life.
Yeah.
Because you know, even amongst prisoners that have done terrible things, I'm against the death penalty. Um, the only reason I can see for the death penalty, if it's in a country where it is impossible to maintain enough security that you know that this person can't hurt someone else. But I can't even imagine a situation like that. But so I'm radically pro-life. And I do give an occasional webinar, or I talk about abortion. And I mean, I think that the fact that I succeeded as well as I did after that, that it shows people, you know, it's not the end of the world. You just pick up and keep going. And that's important.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, it seems you've had an intellectual life too. So you kind of had the means to grapple with it, I would guess, kind of intellectually as well as spiritually. Yeah. But it led to a conversion, right? Eventually? Is that right?
The conversion was actually due to an experience in Rome.
Oh, wow.
My first husband, who he died of esophageal cancer. Prior to his death, he wanted to go to Rome because his mother, who was had just turned 85, had always wanted to go to Rome. I had zero interest in Rome because I wasn't Catholic. So I said, you know, well, yeah, okay, we'll go. And I said, it's fine. I'll want to do the historical sites, the art sites, that kind of thing. And we can have breakfast and dinner together. And he agreed. And then towards the end, he said, you know, could we all do something together as a family? And I pointed out, well, we are eating breakfast and dinner. It didn't work, though. So he said, you know, he said, why don't we go on a tour? A bus tour out, you know. And I said, all right, but if it has anything religious, I'm not going in. Now, it's not that I was anti-religious, I just didn't care. Yeah. So we went on a bus trip called what was it, at Rome Outside the Walls. And the only place that had anything to do with religion was the catacombs. So the bus stopped, they turned off the air conditioner, there was no bathroom, so I decided to go into the catacombs. And to show you the level of my ignorance, I was walking through, and they were off to the right. They were having mass, and I knew what that looked like. And I said, what's wrong with these people? It's not Sunday. Why are they having mass? You know what I mean? It was to me, it was a legitimate question. Yeah. You know? So I just kept going, and I caught up with them with no idea. I mean, it really impressed me how God can just take you and turn you around in like 2 seconds. So I was in the catacombs, got caught up with the tour, and there was a Vietnamese priest I think he was a priest, dressed in a black cassock. He was behind a table that looked like an altar stone, and he was talking, and I had no interest. But I was standing there looking at him, looking around, and it was like I had a ticker tape go through my head. That's the second time it was the first time it happened, but I've had it happen twice. And it was like a ticker tape, like somebody was typing. And the message was the truth with a capital T is where the Catholic Church is, or is within the Catholic Church. And I looked at it and I said, whoever did that doesn't know that truth shouldn't be capitalized.
Copy editor. Yeah.
So it was like, oh my word. But I didn't say, I figured out that that was not something I could have ever imagined. There's just no way. So I didn't say anything to my husband. When we got back to the United States, he was very religious Catholic. And I said, you know, I'd like you to call your parish priest. And he said, why? I said, because I'm going to convert. And he started to laugh because he thought I was kidding. It's like, no, but I'm serious. I'm converting. And he was stunned. I studied with Father Smolensky for a year. He had worked at Holy Apostles, and he said, you know, you should go down there. It was only about 30 miles from where I lived. He said, go down there get a master's degree. I was already a doctor of sociology.
Huh.
So I went down and I got a 90 credit MA plus a postmaster's certificate. And he had said to me, you should go because you're more interested in this than most people, when I was in the process of converting. So the rector of Holy Apostles, when I was ready to graduate, he came to me and he said, you couldn't even make this up. He said, you're more interested in this than most converts. And I thought, oh, not again. And he said, if you go to Dominican House and you get a license, I will hire you as a professor here. So
Wow.
I talked to my husband and he agreed. We did. I came back. I worked there for 30 years almost. And then I left there, and now I'm the dean of the theology faculty at Pontifex University. Entirely, I work entirely online. But, so all because of a ticker tape going through my head. I mean, it was just bizarre. I mean, my whole life changed.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, sounds miraculous. And it's something that it's not like you were on the Catholic path and had a kind of reawakening or spiritual epiphany on that Catholic path, but it was just like almost out of the blue. And and it sounds like you were happy and while you were studying.
Yeah, I was.
While you were doing the master's, because you were,
Yeah, it was an interesting experience, and there is no way. I know that there is no way that could have come from within me. Prior to that, I think I had been to possibly 2 masses. He had taken me to, my husband had taken me to a Christmas mass, midnight mass, and I went in. This was years before this occurrence, and I walked in and I'm looking around. And I was thinking to myself, boy, there's a lot of Catholics. I mean, it was a cathedral in Providence, Rhode Island. Anyway, so he looked at me and he had an expression on his face I had never seen before. And he said, "This is the miracle we believe in." And I'm like, oh, come on, to myself. That's what I was thinking.
Right.
Then I got my own miracle.
Right. Well, I'm just thinking that, I mean, the meaning of the Mass, it doesn't really have meaning unless there's something inside of you that has opened up. It's a connection between, I mean, the Mass kind of happens, externally in a way, but there's a connection internally.
Yes.
Yeah. And I could see walking into Mass without that internal opening, it wouldn't mean much at all, It would just be funny, strange.
Yeah. Just a lot of people that were in there.
Right. Right.
Christmas Eve. And, I was not anti-Catholic or anything. I just wasn't interested.
Wow. That's a big change. Yeah. Wow.
It is a change. And so my whole life changed. And I still teach, and I'm the dean at Pontifex University, which is entirely a Catholic and in line with the magisterium. And I enjoy it. I'm 73 now, so I hope to do it for another 3 or 4 years. And because my mind is still, as far as I can tell, alert. So I want to continue doing that for as long as I can, at least another 3 or 4 years, I hope.
Yeah, that's great. I was just at a workshop at a local retreat center here, and it was called Conscious Aging. Is that Holy Spirit Retreat Center here? And there were people there. I guess the ages were from 58 to 90 something. Yeah. So, and I was amazed at how vital and active number of people are. It's some are moving slow, and some in their 80s are moving slow, and some are moving fast. Yeah.
But apart from the physical, what's important is the mental and the spiritual. And that I do believe that just being engaged with something as important as religion, as your religion,
Yeah.
it keeps you relevant, and I think it keeps you somewhat active.
It
So
keeps you relevant to the people in your community, you mean, or just,
I think so, because I
yeah,
mean, you have if you're going to church or if you're going to mass for non-Catholics, if they're just going to church or they're going to mass, it's like they're a witness to the faith right up to the end, and they can talk about the kinds of problems they've had, in age and how God has helped, so it keeps them relevant, for one thing, because they're still engaged in the religion, as
right.
opposed to which there's nothing wrong with being, in a place where you can't get to church, but you watch it on, you watch the mass on television, or you do your spiritual reading when you're sick or bad weather. But for those who can get out, it's a tremendous witness also to people. And I think, it enables, when you can get out and you're worshiping and you're studying or you're listening to webinars on this sort of thing, it helps you to gain more information and deepen the relationship with others and with God. So
Yeah,
it's
I
not,
think so.
uh,
Yeah. I
yeah,
mean,
it's
body,
not
body,
that,
mind, and soul, especially when
yeah,
you go there physically, you're kind of body,
yeah,
mind, and soul
yeah.
into it. Yeah.
I mean, obviously, at some point, most of us will not be able to get there, or unless someone takes us. But still, with the wonderful things that are on television now, you
Yeah.
know, and there's places like Pontifex, there's Catholic Distance University, there's Holy Apostles. There's a whole bunch of places that offer courses that are at the graduate or undergraduate level. But you could just, as an older person or as a sick person, you could just audit them and get the information, and
Yeah.
that will help you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, out here, there's through the Archdiocese of Los Angeles, there's a Catholic Bible Institute. It's kind of
Mhm,
a cooperation between the Archdiocese of LA and Loyola Marymount University.
mhm,
And it's a 2-year course, Old
mhm,
Testament first year, New Testament second year.
mhm,
They would have meetings once a month and fly in theologians from wherever they were coming from.
mhm.
But during COVID, I took it during COVID, it was all Zoom.
Yeah.
So the theologians, didn't have to fly into LA. But
Mhm,
it was just incredible because
yeah.
I had never really read through the Bible,
Mhm,
and when, at my age, I thought I need to do this. And the course was just extraordinary. And we got all sorts of resources, which I still have.
mhm,
And, we had readings, which we read through the month, and we had kind of a reflection paper we had to write each month on whatever book of the Bible we were reading, which is just a great kind of touchstone,
yeah.
that I can go back to remind
Yeah.
myself of what this book of the Bible meant to me, at that
Mhm,
time, and still does.
mhm,
But it was great. Yeah.
mhm,
Yeah, a
mhm.
great resource. And
Yeah.
now anybody can access it because I think it's still online. Yeah.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, and so there are quite a few places that are starting to put things on the internet, and people are able to get that education. Holy Apostles was one of the first ones. We worked with Ralph McInerney,
Ralph
and
McInerney. I've heard
yeah,
that name.
oh
Well,
yeah, good
Ralph.
good philosopher, and Catholic philosopher. Um, anyway, he started International Catholic University,
Hmm.
and it was all online. And then Holy Apostles became involved, and we trained hundreds of people.
Wow.
It
Huh.
was all worth doing.
I'm just writing that down here. Right. Wow, that's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. You never know what's going to happen. It's like all of a sudden, boom. It's like,
right. It's always a surprise. The great,
yeah,
the great.
walking,
You can't predict it.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
walking in the catacombs, I had no idea that when I walked out, I would not be the same person ever again.
You know, can you remind me? The catacombs. It's a word I haven't heard in a long time. And yeah, I was in Rome once and went to
Mm-hmm.
St. Peter's and other
Mm-hmm.
spots. The catacombs were the place where the early Christians used to worship in a kind of hidden environment. Am I remembering that right? Or how would you describe that?
As I know them, they're a cemetery, underground cemetery.
Okay.
Um, I'm
Wow.
sure that worship probably occurred. Um, just looking at the stone altar that priest was looking behind, that looked like it could have been
Yeah.
a old thing. But yeah, the catacombs hold the bodies of many, 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 many Christians, people who were fed to lions, people who fought bears.
Wow.
Yeah, so
So
it's
is that near the Colosseum or is it farther away or?
I think it's further away, but I couldn't tell you because I converted in the 90s. So it's going back a long time. But
So it sounds like the word catacombs means kind of cemetery, especially kind
yeah,
of
if you
ancient.
look up on the
Yeah,
internet, Roman catacombs
yeah,
or catacombs in Rome, and the artwork too. I mean, it's incredible. But you can't. It's all underground.
yeah.
And so you can't just go in because I imagine that there have been people who have been lost. You have to be with a group and they count you when you leave because you could get so lost in there you'd end up dead.
Wow. Well, I'm gonna take a virtual tour if I can in a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah. So I
But
was I was very I was impressed because I had not had something like that ever happen to me before or after. And it was a life-changing thing in probably less than 5 seconds.
wow. Hmm.
And I mean, I had zero interest in Catholicism. But anyway, so it changed my life, and here I am,
Wow.
70,
Yeah.
74. And, I've trained hundreds of seminarians. I have no idea how many lay people, certainly dozens of sisters, so it was really, I often wonder what would have happened if I said, oh, I've got indigestion or something. I should go sleep, Instead, it was like, it was so dramatic. There was no way
Right.
you could
Right.
walk. Say that was
Right.
not, yeah.
It's not something you can decide about, I don't think, right?
Yeah. It's like you look and it's like, okay, we're going to do this.
We're gonna go that way. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It is. It is. It shows the power of God in an individual life. And, I think that this kind of thing probably happens all the time. We don't necessarily hear about it, but it's like, I mean, once that happens, there's no way you can deny God's existence. I mean, there was just no way there's no way I would have come up with those words. They would have meant nothing to me. And when they went through my head and I saw the T capitalized, it's like, what the heck's up with that? Whoever wrote that didn't spell it right. And then I thought,
So
wait a minute.
it's not like it sounds like maybe something you heard and something you saw.
Yeah, it was only I saw, I didn't hear.
Wow. Okay.
My
Wow.
mind was like, what the heck is it with the capital T?
Wow.
And of course, I didn't know what capital T meant in truth. And so once I found that out, it was like, oh. Uh-oh.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
Hey, so do you want to hear a little bit about this novel
Yes,
that I
yes,
wrote?
I do. Now that we've
That
talked about me for a long time.
yeah, that very few people know anything about. Well, it has a story, but so I'm calling it right now. I'm calling it a modern love story with a Catholic twist.
Okay.
And and uh, if if so, and I hope to bridge secular sacred. But if I were to describe it in 3 acts, I would say this protagonist goes on a journey.
Mm-hmm.
Act 1, his girlfriend leaves him. Act 2, he goes into emotional tailspin, resurrects himself through music, sports. Act 3, he meets a new woman who lifts him to a higher love, you know. But the new woman is a practicing Catholic, and she's a single mother, and who lives with her parents. And he is a lapsed Catholic. So when they meet, it kind of gives him the chance to re-explore his own Catholic roots and find new meaning in it.
Mm-hmm.
And but it also the whole new relationship kind of lifts his spiritual life, romantic life, and personal life and professional life. He's a teacher,
Mm-hmm.
he's a basketball coach. But I mean, why I thought it might be important, why it might be valuable, is because it shows just everyday Catholics, going about their regular life, dealing with all the responsibilities your next door neighbor would have or that you would have.
Mm-hmm.
I think it just presents Catholics as members of the world at large,
Mm-hmm.
but kind of providing a window into their Catholicism, even into the Mass, even into
Mm-hmm.
discussions they might have, on the issue.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I was, one of the things I actually wanted to ask you was when, we were at this Catholic Writers Guild online conference, many presentations. There was a great presentation on, when you're approaching an agent, when you're looking for a publisher, you have to come in with your list of comp titles, the
Mm-hmm.
books you know of that are like yours.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really still searching for a novel that kind of presents, Catholics as everyday people in a kind of modern multicultural world.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering, do you know of any? I mean, do all Catholic novels do that? Because I'm very, I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean. I don't, but who would be Sebastian.
Oh, interesting. Maybe I'll send Sebastian a note because I'd really be interested in reading such a book. I mean, I'm really interested in the interfaith dialogues, and in recent years, I came to really admire and like this Jewish writer named Allegra Goodman,
Mm-hmm.
who she wrote this book called Catterskill Falls, about a Jewish community in upstate New York during the summer when they were kind of vacationing.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
it was just a beautiful. She became one of my favorite writers.
Mm-hmm.
And just in the way that it was a kind of a window into the whole Jewish culture and humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And, I read Colin McCann's Let the Great World Spin, and there's a Catholic priest. There's two brothers. One of the brothers is a Catholic priest working with, troubled people in New York City. And that was, that was a really authentic, Catholic character in the modern world, published by American mainstream press.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm still kind of looking, and I'm hoping the book I wrote can fill a void if in fact it exists. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that Sebastian does publish some novels. I'm not exactly sure, but I don't, yeah, I think he does. So you could certainly ask him, and if he doesn't know the answer, he'll probably know who does.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd like to. I'd like to do
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, no, I would just love to have non-Catholics read the book
Mm-hmm.
and see what their view of Catholics are after reading the book. And then I like to have Catholics read the book and just, have that dialogue too. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, well, the Catholic Writers Guild, they must have a membership list that talks about people that by their genre.
Yes, yes. I'm just getting into that world. I'm just very recently kind of considering myself a Catholic writer because I've kind of had a literary life for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always been interested in the East-West dialogues. You
Mm-hmm.
know, there was when I lived up in the Bay Area, I met a very interesting Jesuit priest
Mm-hmm.
um, who lived in Japan for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
And Father Thomas Hand, great man, deceased for, I don't know, almost 20 years now. But when he studied a lot of Zen meditation, and it really kind of blew his um, Jesuit mind. He was a very, very rigorous thinker,
Mm-hmm.
but it really it got him in touch with his gut or a whole other sense of reality. And so he started this East-West meditation group at the Mercy Center in Burlingame.
Mm-hmm.
And since then, I've just been very much uh, interested in how uh, Buddhist thought can help you understand the meaning of Christianity and Catholicism. I've been really interested in that for a long time. But just recently, I had a kind of spiritual awakening where I'm just going back to my roots, wholeheartedly Catholic, just complete and I'm not considering myself an East-West writer. It's like, no, I'm a Catholic writer and I'm writing from the Catholic perspective. So
Right. Mm-hmm. And that's good.
yeah, yeah. And trying to figure out what that means, and
Mm-hmm.
trying to figure out who the touchstone Catholic writers are and the way that, I think, I don't know I mean, there was like in the 20th century, there was like what, J.F. Powers, Graham Greene,
Mm-hmm.
John O'Hara was Catholic, F. Scott Fitzgerald probably grew up Catholic. Mary Gordon had an interesting kind of Jewish Catholic connection. Flannery O'Connor. Um, but yeah, I'm trying to find, who are because there seems to be a kind of renaissance in Catholic letters now through the Catholic Writers Guild. And I've heard about this Catholic Imagination Conference that's happened every couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think it was a poet laureate of California, Dana Goya, who was involved with starting that.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I kind of want to be part of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sounds interesting.
Yeah, I think it's very
Mm-hmm.
interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And what else can I say? I can talk a little bit about. I've been one of my interests has been Thomas Merton,
Mm-hmm.
and also at the retreat center where I went to see or I went to participate in the workshop on conscious aging. There's a Thomas Merton group there,
Mm-hmm.
and which meets once a month. So we've been reading through books of Thomas Merton and discussing them. And one of my spiritual publications, let's see, where is it? There's a Merton seasonal, it's published by the International Thomas Merton Society. And yeah, they published an essay. I wrote an essay called Free at Last, Free at Last, A Faith Journey with Thomas Merton.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good.
Yeah, it was a way for me to kind of chronicle my experience of coming back into the Catholic Church with the aid of Thomas Merton. Because, you know, I'd been a lapsed Catholic for a long time. I'd had this interest in Eastern religions, Western dialogue. And so did Thomas Merton. And he was, you know, very contemplative, very much interested in starting the East-West dialogues. So it was a really kind of natural fit for me to read about what it meant for him to be a Catholic with those interests, and how I could help kind of redefine myself as a Catholic. And I was particularly interested in, I called it free at last, free at last. I was really interested in his notions of freedom, because, you know, he talked about, in I think Conjectures of a Guilty Bystander, he talked a lot about how so many things in modern society, you know, that provide conveniences or make us more technologically adept, seemingly give us more freedom, but he says they actually, we become servants to them. They actually make us more servile. And the only true freedom you can really find is in religion, is in discovering your authentic spiritual religious self. And that was something that made sense to me really intellectually. But I'm just kind of beginning to live that now. That makes so much sense to me now. So Thomas Merton was very important to me in terms of the East-West dialogue, and in terms of his kind of explanation of freedom, and how a free person is really kind of spiritually based. And there he was, a Trappist monk, you know, living in a little room far away from everything, but never feeling more free. So, yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense to me because, you know, I think that once we know our religion well, or are learning our religion well, that our faith, it's not just a religion, it's a faith. I think that it grounds us.
Yes, because the roots are so deep.
Yeah, it kind of plants you in rich soil.
Yeah, right. I mean, I'm sure you can talk more about that, but one of the things, you know, I discussed a little bit in the novel, you know, through conversations with characters, is how, especially for one of the characters, her religion is important to her because her religion is more than a belief system. It's a social system. It's a cultural system. It's a system of prayer. It's a system of sacraments. It's a historical system that has a lineage of saints and theologians and other holy figures. And yeah, and that's, to be in that company that stretches back, you know, a couple thousand years, it can be very grounding, I think.
Yeah, I think it, especially, you know, because when you're talking about all of these aspects of it, you know, that you just itemized, you know, yeah, I mean, it's like, it's an all-encompassing, I can't say worldview, but I mean, I suppose in some sense it's also a world review, a worldview, not a review. But it gives you what you need to live probably in any culture, because you know what you are, you know what is real, what is really real, you know, and to me, that that is priceless.
Hmm.
You once you learn that, and then you go on and learn more and more about the religion, about the faith, about what, whatever way you want to approach it. It makes you at home. It grounds you, and it enables you, I think, to interact with people who are entirely different, who have entirely different religions, entirely different personalities or cultures. And it's like, I think to a great extent, because the religion is based on love and sacrifice, that you can really have a good grounding for yourself, and you can help others. It's to me, I don't know how I managed to live. Really, I don't know how I managed to live before I was Catholic. It was just bumbling around, thinking
bouncing off different experiences, people,
people, and really didn't know myself as well as I thought I did.
Yeah.
When you then start to make, examination of conscience, examination of, what you're thinking, what you think about, how you react to different religious, different religious things that you hear, you get to know yourself better. So it's grounding you in the world. It's grounding you as a Catholic person, where you can help others, where you can grow yourself, where you never really have to be alone, So my husband...
Meaning what, you never have to be alone because you're in community, or you never have to be alone even when you are physically alone?
Right. Even when you're alone, you're never alone.
Yeah, you're never, yeah.
And that's amazing. So my husband, Bill, had died 2 years ago. And, we were in this 1,800 square foot house, which is granted not huge, but for one person and a cat it is. And, I never really felt like I was in an empty house. I always felt that there was access to spiritual help if I needed it, just to think or pray or read something. It really is, it's different. I know you were mentioning the Eastern religions, and I know they do a lot of things like meditation. This is just entirely different, I think, because it is the hand of God coming in and helping you.
That's interesting. Yeah, and you can use those words to describe it too. But I think, there was so many things I was going to say, but 3 things, but the last of which is, you're not alone because you're connected to this fabric.
But it's not fabric. You're connected to God.
Yes, well, that's right. I would, I'm still, I'm been on the path, for a long time, but now I'm really becoming on the focused Catholic path. So, but yes, to God. I mean, but that fabric, and so you're not alone. You're connected to this. I say web, you say God, but it's connected to God, whatever that that all kind of encompassing, the God that is within every particle of life, but so I could see how when you have that connection, you're not alone because, and also I was going to say that, when you were talking about how it grounds you and you, know your place in the world. I was going to say, in ways that we really can't fully understand. It's just this shift. But then
Yeah.
when you started talking about the examination of conscience, which I haven't done, much deeply, I would say that grounds you more in the world in ways that you really can understand, which is interesting, you
Hmm.
know?
Yeah, it is. It is.
So
Yeah.
this, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that that's something that many people kind of avoid, but I think it's really an important thing because you get to know yourself, you get to know your limits, you get to know what you need to work on. And
So
again,
is there a Catholic, I've heard that term before, is there a Catholic term, practice of examining the conscience? Is that like, or is that, you know what I
there
mean?
there could be some way of doing it that is suggested. I don't know. To me, I just sit down and think about my life. I try to review the day.
Okay, yeah,
Um, but I can review all the way back, as far as I can remember.
yeah. Well,
Uh,
I
yeah,
heard recently, I think I was listening to a Bishop Barron talk where he's talking about the Ignatian
yeah.
review of the day, which is kind of,
Hmm.
yeah, there was an Ignatian review of the day. I've heard of the 12-step moral inventory,
Yeah,
which is probably
yeah, yeah.
pretty,
And it's important because if you don't know yourself, I don't know how you can possibly, um, in
yeah.
any.
But so what would you say, I mean, for an examination of conscience, what would be, the first question you would ask yourself as you were reviewing the day? Or what would be three questions?
Well, the first thing I do would be look at the commandments and see if I had broken any or came close to breaking them.
Yeah.
Um, I would examine uh, my relationships with others and whether I've done anything that was unkind or, uh, you know,
Wow.
and
Yeah.
even people I don't know. Like, sometimes you're driving down the street and there's some idiot in front of me. God forgive me. You
Right.
know, going 5 miles an hour in a 60-mile-an-hour zone, and it's like you almost hit them in the trunk.
Right.
And it's like I have a very unkind thought. you know so I mean, it's just even stuff like that. We should have better control. It's like if someone's driving like that in front of you, maybe you should worry that the person needs help or that the car is going to break down and they're going to need help. What I think is, get out of my way. And
Right.
that's the right thought. you
Right.
know yeah. So I try to assess. It's not like I have a scale, but it's like, am I doing better on this particular area, or not? And then you can always go and talk to your priest. We have a wonderful priest here in Vermont. He's from the Philippines.
Yeah, our priest well, he's from LA, but he's Filipino, so
Uh,
yeah.
this guy is so kind and good and patient. So you can go to a priest and, sit down and say, okay, this is what I'm trying to do with my examination of conscience. And I've discovered I don't like slow drivers. But, but no, I mean, seriously, to go in with, if you see you're doing something wrong and you do it again, and I mean, not like breaking a commandment, but I mean, obviously, if you're breaking a commandment, you need to go to confession. But I mean, it's like, okay, here's a slow driver. I can't stand this anymore. I'm not going to take this road. I mean, if you're getting that kind of a reaction, something's wrong. You need to go see somebody who can help you sort it out. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a
Well,
stupid
well,
example,
well, well, for
but
me, yeah, I've been doing a little bit of that, but it wasn't with a driver. It was with someone I was talking to on a call center, which involved, which involved trying to get some prescriptions, which, somebody wouldn't authorize, and stuff like that. So,
yeah.
and running into all kinds of roadblocks. And,
Hmm.
and for me, yeah, and I was just kind of becoming aware of that. For me, it's like, I want to go through my day. I know what I want to do. I want to do this. I want to finish that. I want to move on to this. I want to move on to that. And if something starts to impede that, then the fuse gets to be a little bit shorter. You know,
Yeah.
so that,
See, that's a good insight to have, because then you can go talk to your priest or, you know, a sister or a brother and say, no, this is what my problem is. I'm losing my patience with something, you know, and it's not anything huge, but it's like if I've got a list of 10 things I want to do and I only get number one done, then I'm going to be mad, you know, because
yeah. And
that's
usually and often when you're mad, there's another person around with you. So you're kind of inflicting that on that person.
mhm, mhm. But
Yeah.
it's giving a bad example,
Yeah.
because you're Catholic and you know, you have to be aware. A lot of people don't like Catholics, and I'm not exactly sure why. But anyway, a lot of people don't like Catholics, and I think if they see us act badly over something that's not of any kind,
Trivial. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Well, I mean, right now I'm having the image of Jesus Christ
yeah,
in my mind, and I'm seeing him as an infinitely patient man.
hmm,
You know,
yeah,
infinite patience, infinite compassion. I know he overturned the tables at the temple, but I think his relationships with people just must have been,
yeah,
you know, as calm as,
hmm,
you know, I don't want to say as calm as the ocean, but as deep in compassion as patient and patience as the ocean, really.
well, yeah. I mean, I don't think that most people go out to try to aggravate us. I mean, sometimes it happens, sure, but
Yeah.
you know, somebody, if you show a lack of patience, you know, not you personally, but if any of us show a lack of patience, it's like, why don't you have better control over your emotions and your responses? And it's a legitimate question. I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes, yeah, it's like, why do I get upset when I'm behind someone driving 20 miles under the speed limit? You know?
Really.
Yeah. So, I
Right.
mean, you need to look at yourself. Yes, this person is an idiot for doing that on a highway where most people are going 75, but that's beside the point. Why are you getting so upset about this slow car? You know? And so you need to figure out those sort of stupid little
Well,
things that we do and fix them.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But it can mean also, I mean, that's interesting because I mean, it says not only that impatience says not only a lot about ourselves, but it says a lot about the world we live in. You know, that we
Mm,
live in a world with a million cars, you
yeah.
know, all around us.
Hmm.
And I mean, when you were talking about examining the conscience, you know, I thought, well, commandments, relationships, you know,
Hmm.
two great
And
ideas, you know, how we relate to other people, but then, you know, we don't live in a world of just people. We live in a world
incidents.
of incidents and nature and
Hmm.
you know
Hmm.
yeah so how yeah well yeah anyway but yeah people primarily
It's
but
how, to me, the issue is, how do you respond to something you're not happy with? I mean, when
yeah
I look out, I live in Vermont. I look out the window and we're having a blizzard. It's like, ah, you know, shoot me now.
right
You know? And
right
it's like, I live in Vermont. Why am I surprised that we're having a blizzard? Right. So I I think what I do when I think about anything, it's like, why am I responding this way to this stimulus?
oh that's interesting I
Yeah,
understand that yeah
slow, the person who's talking too fast, the person who asks 50 questions, all
right
in order. You know, so
right
it's your reaction. It's
that's
not
interesting
it's not what's happening outside of you. It's how you're reacting to it. And that's what needs to be brought under control.
right yeah yeah
Hmm.
yeah that's that's a life's work
Yeah.
you know
Yeah, I agree. I've been doing it for the last
yeah
2 years.
Um, let's see. Where can we go next? I was going to ask what you were reading. I was going to tell you what I'm reading, but you know, I don't know.
Hmm. Hmm. Right now, I'm not reading. I'm writing.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
I'm
Is
writing a
it, yeah,
second. Um,
a memoir?
yeah. The first memoir was the one about my mother trying to abort me. That survived memoir of forgiveness. And so what I'm thinking of writing about now, after my first husband died, he and I were friends with a couple up here in Vermont. And see, my husband was the second one to die. The four of us were friends. Bill, his wife died, Bertha, of ovarian cancer. Then my husband died of esophageal cancer. And eventually Bill and I grew close and married. And he died 2 years ago of heart, liver, and kidney failure, which was not good. But I had written about my mother. I think I'd like to write about my two husbands. Jimmy, the first, was extremely Catholic. Yeah. And the second one was Catholic, but had never practiced. And so it took me a while to get him back into the church, but I did. And
so you married him after your experience in the catacombs, right? Or
long after.
Long after that? Okay.
Yeah. So what I want to do, I had for some time, the cemetery is only a mile from here. Catholic cemetery. So I go there in the summer. Of course, in the winter, they close the cemeteries here because if you ever fell down in there, you'd die. No one would ever find you. Because when we get snow.
Yeah.
So they close them with gates and everything. You can't get in them. But once the weather becomes more hospitable, like in May, I would go to the cemetery every day. And if I'm in Connecticut, where I lived with my first husband, I will go to, if I have to be in Connecticut, then I will go to the cemetery there. But what I wanted to do was reflect on the marriage through the conversations. They're not really conversations. They're more like me talking when I go there and talk to him. And now, I think it's an interesting way to work out the dynamics of that relationship. It was a very good marriage. And I was literally heartbroken when he died. When my first husband died, the only thought I could have was, thank God the suffering is over. Esophageal cancer has got to be one of the worst things in the world. It is horrific.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, he was on morphine, more morphine. And in the end, one day he jumped up and he went over and leaned against the wall. He hadn't been out of bed in ages. And he said, I'm going to die now. And I said, no, I think you still have time. And then he opened his mouth and it was like a fire hose of blood.
Oh my God. Jeez.
Esophageal cancer, the people often bleed to death.
Oh.
So
that's just brutal.
Yeah.
And so that can't be too easy to write about that if you wrote about that directly, but it sounds like you're writing about conversations you're kind of having, which would be maybe a little less brutal.
Yeah. So Jimmy, my first husband, when he died, he was he was ridiculously sick. Yeah. He had a backache. I had been up in Vermont at the quilt show that they used to have. And he said that he had a backache and he'd gone to the hospital and they'd given him some painkillers or muscle relaxants. I got home 2 weeks later, he still was no better. I was down there with him for 2 weeks, nowhere better. So I took him to the hospital, and a big hospital in Connecticut. And I said, he needs to be diagnosed. And he said, well, I don't understand what the problem is. He's already been diagnosed with his back. So I just looked at the doctor. Now, this is where I need to look at my patients. So I looked at the doctor and I said, well, we could go with that if you don't mind being the second person to misdiagnose him.
Ah, wow. Yeah.
And he just looked at me like, oh, what an awful woman. Anyway, so he did I don't know if it was a PET scan or a CAT scan, but he came back, whole different attitude. And he said he's full of cancer.
Wow. Jeez.
So it was all esophageal. So he only lasted a couple of months after that.
Wow.
But Bill, my second husband, again, the four of us were friends. So actually, Bill's wife, Bertha, she was the first to die. She died of ovarian cancer. Then my husband, Jimmy, died. And so then, Bill was deteriorating because of his heart. And, that it was quite a struggle because I really fought hard to get him to go to mass, that sort of thing. I did get him, he died November 22nd, 2022. I was there and I praise God for that every day because I was with him and I heard a little pop in his body. And then he flushed and he was gone. His eyes froze. So I screamed for help. And they did CPR, which he had wanted for 35 minutes. They did it. And I finally went in. I said, do you have anything at all? And he said, no. And so 35 minutes without any oxygen to the brain, he wouldn't have even known he was alive.
Yeah.
So I said, stop, just stop. Yeah. And, that was the worst of anything I've ever had to do because, I knew when I said stop that he would remain dead. There was no way. He was dead. They don't do CPR, live people. But, right. But yeah, so the book that I want to write is about the kinds of conversations we had when I was trying to bring him back to the faith. He had been, confirmed, all of that stuff when he was young, but just got away from it. So I worked hard to get him back. I did get him back to going to mass with me here. And then
I was thinking I would think a great question to ask is why didn't you want to go to mass? What would his spirit say now,
He'd probably say thanks, Cynthia.
Pardon?
He probably would say thank you, Cynthia, because by getting him to go to mass, he was I don't know what happened that made him leave. He never told me, but he never went to another religion. He just didn't practice. So,
wow.
He got to the point where he'd go with me every Sunday. Holy days of obligation.
Almost more for you than for him, perhaps, it sounds like a little bit, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think it worked. He did get the last rites.
Yeah.
Which was another difficult story, but I did get him the last rites.
So how's the writing going? Sorry, how is the writing going?
It's going, but it's slow. I'm not a fast writer. I come up with, what I do is I write down things I remember, sentence after sentence. If I remember a conversation that's important, I write that down. So that'll take me a few months. A little bit of work every day. And sometimes it's funny because it'll jog your memory. It's like, oh yeah, right, there was that, and so I'm hoping, we're only in February, so if I finish that part of it, say by June, I'll have a good 6 months or so. I work obviously, but I'll have a good 6 months where I can be working on it and then, have some of my friends review it. So maybe in a year or so, it'll be a memoir. The first one was hard. It was really hard because, nobody wants to think of having a mother who doesn't want them, and so it takes a lot out of you when you look back, and there's no other way around it. The woman tried to abort me. She did not want me. The only reason she stopped was she was afraid she would die, and she told me that. So,
Wow.
Yeah. So, but anyway, so I think memoir
Well,
is also memoir is good because it also makes you reflect.
yes, I have to say when I live in California, I've lived in three places. I've lived in the Bay Area.
Hmm.
Right now I'm in Los Angeles. Uh, my wife and I lived for a little bit down in North County, San Diego County, down near San Diego. And when I was down there, I I was a columnist for an online magazine called WritersMonthly.com, which
Hmm.
I don't think it's online anymore. But I actually my beat what I wrote about was memoirs because the very first uh, kind of article I submitted to them was about why memoirs are important. Based on that, he said, "Hey, why don't you be a columnist? You know, and you can write about memoirs." And I would review some memoirs and stuff. But I remember early on, I said, you know, in the 19th century, you know, when you had all these great novelists, you know, Tolstoy, right? He was, I
Yeah.
mean, Dickens, you know, just Jane Austen, you know, just all the great novelists. I said, you know, reality must have been so intense. The
Mm-hmm.
real world was so intense and so authentic that as a respite from the real world, you needed great fiction. And now, you know, I don't know if I'm going to stick to it now, but now, in many ways, the world is so artificial, you know, with technology and media and
Hmm.
consumerism. It's so artificial that the respite, what we need is to read about real lives, you know, not fiction, but real things that happen. So I think, and that's what I said. I said memoirs are really important and crucial at this time because of that. Because we live in such an artificial world, it's easy to forget what's happening to us, you know.
Hmm. Hmm.
And yeah, but I think, you know, there's always room for great fiction. But yeah, no memoir, and I think maybe that's one of the reasons because you know memoirs have really they really beginning with Frank McCourt, they really started to have a you know really hit their stride in
Hmm.
recent decades. And I think
Hmm.
it's because people are just you know so much of our experience is so superficial and artificial. It's great to read about really deep things that people actually experience.
Hmm. Yeah, it's true. Um, I think the memoir of the average person is what's important. A lot of stars and football stars and all those people, they write about their extraordinary lives, and
Yeah,
that's in. It's more of a biography than a memoir, but I
yeah,
think memoir of the average person, um, you know, in this country, and I suppose in others. I think in this country, especially because for so long, we've been kind of leading the world. And I think people need to get a sense of how the real people live. I think in other countries, for instance, they think we all live great lives and, are, wealthy. I suppose compared to other countries we are. But I mean, if you compare amongst us, we're not. So,
that's interesting because it seems like we can. It would seem like many people might look at from outside of the country would look at Americans and think, oh, they don't have tragic lives. They don't experience tragedy in their lives,
yeah,
you know.
that's why
But
they.
everybody does, you know.
Yes, yes, exactly. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's important to see it. But to me, it always goes back to it is a way to reflect on your own life, hopefully improve, work on your soul, so to speak. And at the
Yeah,
same time, someone else might read it and say, gee, I ought to be doing that kind of analysis of myself.
Well, yeah. Or they can even do that while reading a memoir.
Sure, they could.
And I think that's one of the great values of books, because you know, it's a reading is a peaceful and quiet experience, but our lives, time doesn't stop. Time doesn't stop when we're living.
Yes.
And you can't be going through a tragedy and take a moment to, you know, recollect and make meaning of it all. But with a book, you can. I mean, you can stop reading, and the whole book is going to be there, and it kind of exists outside of time in a way.
Yes.
And yeah, so that's the so I think that's a great value of right. We can only do that in a book. You can't do it in real time because time won't stop. But yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
So yeah. So it is, it's an interesting way of writing, and no question about it. Memoir as opposed to biography, which just tells you what has happened in life. With memoir, you're more looking at the consequences and also, you know, why you did certain things. It's not just like, well, I went to college in whatever year and got a BA. You know, it's like, why'd you go for this BA? You know, what influence did it have? You know, all that sort of thing. So it's what I think memoir does is it gets behind the scenes, and that's where the real stuff is.
Yeah. Creates empathy for everybody, for sure. Yeah, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to think of the memoirs of it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, this has certainly been a delightful conversation.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it. Thank you so much. I was hoping it would be a conversation. So yeah, and it's and I've taken some notes. I'm gonna look more into the catacombs. I'm gonna look up the International Catholic University, see how it relates to Ralph McInerney. I'm gonna consider a little bit about examination of conscience, and I'm gonna probably review what memoirs I've read, which ones are out there. So yeah.
You know, International Catholic University, now you can watch I think all the videos from all the classes. They're open to anybody who wants to read them or watch them.
Okay.
So, you know, and it was started by Father Kenneth Baker.
Okay.
Yeah, he was top notch.
Wow. Okay. I've heard of a father, let's see, Felix Just, who has an extraordinary amount of resources online, which are the Catholic Bible Institute. But Father Kenneth Baker.
Yeah, he had a couple of courses, and boy, they were excellent. I used those courses. Yeah, I used his courses.
Yeah.
Okay. He's really smart. He was the editor of Homiletic and Pastoral Review, and he wrote these courses and then recorded them. A video recorded. Very good, and those can now be watched for free. So you should look into them.
All right, I will.
Okay. Well, if you have any questions about memoir or whatever, give me a call.
Okay. I'll send out a word one way or another. Yeah. Okay. And, I will say thank you for the conversation. It's good to meet you virtually.
Yes.
And, I hope to be in touch in one way or another through the cyberspace. For sure. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Take care. Okay.
Bye-bye.